I'm being polite, so I'm not gonna put the whole shrimp in my mouth at the same time. In this chapter, I want to show you that pestos are not necessarily green and filled with basil, and that pestos are not only for pasta. In Italian, pesto means pounded, and it's really any sauce that's been pounded to a coarse paste. They're super concentrated flavor bombs. It is an amazing condiment to finish lots of different dishes. The pesto that I'm going to make today is pesto rosso. I love to pair it warm with the flavors of really quickly cooked shrimp. This pesto is based on a pesto called pesto alla trapanese. It's from the Trapani area of Sicily, and it's made with fresh, juicy tomatoes. I took that idea and instead am using super concentrated, sweet and tangy, sun-dried tomatoes, roasted red peppers. Sicily is also famous for its peppers, so I extrapolated a little bit, slivered almonds, and Calabrian chilies, which are also from Sicily. That gives a super robust, sweet, tangy, spicy condiment that heated is gonna pair really beautifully with the shellfish at the end. To get started, the first thing I'm going to do is put my garlic cloves into a mortar and pestle with a big pinch of kosher salt, which is gonna act as an abrasive and help get this down into a paste. I am going to use 2 anchovy fillets. It's just gonna give it depth and umami and a richness that you might otherwise miss. If you truly hate anchovies, leave them out. It's totally fine. The reason I'm combining these by themselves at the beginning is I don't really wanna bite into a piece of anchovy, and I also don't wanna bite into a piece of garlic. So these are gonna become a paste where everything else is gonna be finely chopped. I want some coarseness of texture, but I just don't want that big coarseness of flavor. Just gonna go at it. I really love my mortar and pestle. I use it for all kinds of stuff, including bashing nuts and making breadcrumbs, making salad dressings. I also love the idea of hand making something so simple. It connects me more to the ingredients and to the process of cooking, the aromas of cooking. This is down to a paste. It's almost liquefied. So I'm gonna set that aside for a second, and I'm gonna do the rest of the ingredients by hand with a sharp knife. I am going to use a 1/4 cup of roasted red peppers. With these ingredients, you can go as fine or as coarse as you want to. I like it pretty fine, but I do really enjoy the experience of having a little bit of texture in the finished dish. Italians are not super precise in general about their knife work. There's a little bit of beauty in some of the pieces being slightly bigger and some of the pieces being a little bit smaller so that you get that variation in the texture. It feels homemade. I want these in pretty small pieces, but I'm not gonna wreck myself getting there. I don't want this to feel like a chopped salad. I want it to feel like a coarse sauce. This to me looks really good. I'm just gonna add them to the garlic anchovy mixture. Sun-dried tomatoes are a little bit leathery. They're a little bit squishy. I think the best way to finely chop them is to start by getting them into these thin strips. I'm going for approximately the same texture on the sun-dried tomatoes as I did the peppers. Just keep in mind that the sun-dried tomato has more of a leathery, chewy texture, and the pepper is more of a soft and juicy, so you might wanna go a little bit finer. So finely chopped, feels pretty fluffy. Now the sun-dried tomatoes are going in with the peppers and the garlic anchovy paste. Now I've got the toasted blanched almonds. Blanched almonds have simply been boiled and have the skins removed. Having a blanched almond is also gonna give a really nice little bit of crunch, whereas we have these other softer textures. This is gonna stay more brittle and a little more toothsome. And my goal here is not to have every single piece of almond be exactly the same size. What I want in the end is for all of these flavors to really meld together while at the same time delivering their own unique texture. The largest piece of almond here is no bigger than the biggest piece of the pepper that I was working with. That looks good. Knife work is done. Now that all of the chopped and coarse ingredients are in here, I'm gonna loosen everything up with a few tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. And the oil is gonna help adjust the texture of the sauce, but it's also gonna help carry the flavors from one to the other. So I'm just gonna fold all of this together. The only thing that I've seasoned so far is the garlic and anchovy at the very beginning. Anchovies themselves are salty. I'm gonna add some spice in the form of Calabrian chili paste. Calabrian chilies are native to Sicily. They're very, very bright and fruity, but also really spicy. I love their flavor, and a jar like this will last you for a very long time. So that's about a teaspoon. I'm stirring just to make sure that everything that was in the very bottom of the bowl is mixed in and that there's an equal distribution of all of the ingredients so that when I taste it, I'm getting a little bit of everything. The first thing I'm getting is a lot of the sweetness from the red pepper and then the tanginess of the tomatoes behind that. It definitely needs more salt. Great flavor from the anchovy. When you have the right amount of anchovy, it should be a very pleasant flavor. When you're tasting, just keep in mind that the human palate can detect sour, sweet, salty, bitter, and umami, which is like that richness or savory flavor, the mouth-filling flavor. When you taste something, try to pick out, am I tasting sweetness? Am I tasting a lot of bitterness? Because all of those flavors can be fixed and adjusted by balancing out with somebody else in the flavor family. So if something is very, very sweet, acidity is going to balance that out. If I'm tasting a lot of sourness, sweetness is going to help that. If I don't taste much of anything, salt will help bring all of that to the forefront. So that's what I'm looking for when I taste, because ultimately what you want is when you taste it, all of those receptors are activated and it's turning into a new flavor when everybody is balanced. The salt is helping. I think what is missing is sour. And I'm going to add white distilled vinegar. It has the kind of acidity that just cuts through everything and doesn't have a ton of other vinegar flavor. A few dashes, you can adjust this to your own palate. And as the pesto sits, it's gonna get better and better. Park it on the counter until it's time for dinner. It will transform. This looks and tastes really great to me. Now that the pesto is done, I'm just gonna swing over here, get the shrimp in the pan, and finish the dish. This is 1 pound of peeled and deveined jumbo shrimp. If you use large, that's fine. They might cook a little bit faster. If you wanna do the peeling and deveining yourself, that is also fine too. I got these ready to go to make it easy for me. And I'm purposely not using a nonstick pan because any little bits of shrimp that are left on the surface are going to mix in with the sauce, and you'll get better browning with a regular stainless steel skillet. I'm putting it over medium heat. I'm gonna add 2 teaspoons of extra virgin olive oil. I'm gonna cook the shrimp before adding the pesto to the pan. I really wanna control the cooking of the shrimp and make sure that the shrimp are cooked perfectly. My oil is shimmering, which means it's very hot. I think shrimp are a great weeknight protein because they cook really, really quickly. You season these with salt and pepper. Shrimp also are great because they tell you when they're cooked. They'll go from this opaque color to the bright pink and white of the cooked flesh. I'm gonna let them cook on one side before I turn them, just to try to get a little bit of flavor development and browning. Shrimp cook really quickly. The best thing you can do when you're cooking shrimp is to not go anywhere. Put them in the pan, keep an eye on them. They smell really sweet and delicious. To make sure the shrimp are cooked all the way through, I like to always look at the thickest part of the shrimp, which is gonna be not the tail end. So this is a good way of checking. So you can see on the cut side where the vein was removed, it's still a little bit gray, a little bit translucent, so it's a little undercooked. Okay, so that guy looks good. It's like uniformly white all the way at the thickest part. I'm gonna take them out. I'm gonna reserve the skillet and just hold the shrimp on a plate. So all of these beautiful brown bits in the bottom of the pan, that's what I was talking about wanting. These are very concentrated little bits of protein that are packed with flavor. I'm gonna deglaze the pan, which just means adding liquid to melt and loosen up those nice little brown bits. If you have a bottle of white wine, go ahead and use the wine to deglaze. If not, a little bit of water is totally fine. And the best tool to scrape these brown bits is a wooden spoon. All of my brown bits are free. There's a tiny bit of liquid left in the pan. I'm actually turning off the heat because there's so much heat still in the skillet, and I'm gonna add the pesto. Now I'm turning up the heat. I didn't want to add the pesto to a hot pan and have it start to burn. And I'm just gonna give it a taste to make sure that it's just warm. Delicious. Warming it just like opened up all of the flavors and made it even more flavorful than it was completely raw. It mellowed out the flavor of the garlic. There's hardly any bite. Last thing I'm going to do before I plate this is finish it with fresh lemon juice. Adding the lemon right at the end off heat is going to preserve all of that fresh lemon juice flavor without cooking it out or diluting it. I have these big, beautiful, gorgeous pink shrimp. I don't want to cover them up or mask them, so I want you to be able to see the sauce and see the shrimp. And this way, when you're serving the shrimp and pesto rosso, people can pick up a shrimp and spoon up a little bit of the pesto at the same time. Any juices that are left on the plate, these are the juices that accumulated while the shrimp was resting. I definitely want to use those, so I'm just going to drizzle those over. You'll get that olive oil flavor, you'll get a little shrimpy flavor. It's like the shrimp made its own pan sauce. Just adding what's left in the skillet on top. And the last little thing is a little bit of basil. The warming up of the garlic and the ingredients in the pesto releases all of that amazing fragrance. So when you're standing, as I am, over a plate of shrimp, you are getting all of the smells of a delicious dish. I love tomato and seafood together. The sweetness and the brininess of the shrimp themselves are complementing the pesto, and the pesto rosso is bringing out all the flavors of the shrimp. You get the silky pepper, the little bits of almond in there. It is a total winner. Two things that were delicious by themselves are now made more delicious by being together. Today I made a delicious pesto rosso with sun-dried tomatoes and sweet red bell peppers. In Italy, there's tons of different kinds of pestos, and you can make them out of almost anything. Today, I taught you how to pair it with beautifully cooked, tender shrimp. This pairing is truly exceptional. I hope that you'll try it at home.